Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Hamilton Report. I'm Scott J. Hamilton, and I'm delighted that you are here with us this evening. I so appreciate it when you join us because more and more people are hearing about the Oklahoma Democratic Party, what we stand for, what we stand up against. And that's because of folks like you sharing our broadcast, sharing our Facebook posts, our Twitter posts, because that's the way we build momentum. And so thank you for sharing. Thank you for being with us this evening. It really is my pleasure, and I don't take this opportunity lightly. So thank you so much. Well, we are now 55 days away from the primary. What that means is our candidates are working tirelessly. If you recall, it was only about 3 weeks ago that they had to file to run for office. So many of them are still scrambling with office space and chairs and desks. And I'm going to do something that I've never done before. I'm going to take this call because it's actually our guest. So if you will forgive me, this is very unprofessional, but Jason, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. You need to log off and log back in.
Okay. I was wondering. I've been sitting here waiting. Okay, let me try it.
Okay. We're going. He's going to jump back on in just a moment. But I was saying that we are our candidates are already just working themselves to the bone, and it's going to be that way. And so they need our help. They need our help with sharing their social media. They need our help with door knocking and dropping literature. We need help with obviously finances for our candidates and for the state party, because everything we do, as you know, costs money, just like in your home. And I recognize that money is tight for all of us right now, but anything that you can afford to contribute either to the party and or candidate will certainly be very, very much appreciated. In these weeks leading up to the primary on this program, you will be meeting more of our candidates, and I'm so happy for the ones that have joined us already. Jason Bollinger is going to be with us. There are some technical difficulties tonight, and I don't know what's happening on his end. So we will hope that he joins us shortly. But I want to remind everyone that turnout is typically low for a midterm election. And that's why it's so important this year for all of us to vote. I'm not going to say our future depends on it, because you've heard that over and over and over. But maybe I will, because I think our future does depend a lot here in Oklahoma, especially on the people that we elect to public service this fall. We have seen such egregious behavior from our governor all the way down, and it's really horrifying when I look at the ways that they are defrauding people, the problems that exist with contracts and buying products that they can't just find anymore. So there's a lot to be done. And our guest this evening is someone who is hoping to do just that, not just in Oklahoma, but indeed our nation's capital. He's running for the seat currently held by James Lankford. And it's my privilege to introduce to you this evening Jason Bollinger. Jason, good evening, and thanks for being with us.
Good evening, Scott. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I didn't know if we were going to make the connection there for a minute, but that's what happens when you do a live broadcast.
Yep.
So, first of all, this is a big step. This is a big step from a fellow from rural Oklahoma, a practicing attorney in Oklahoma City. What was it this year that made you say, I really have to jump in and do this thing?
Sure. Well, I mean, we've been sort of barreling toward this moment, especially with Senator Lankford for the entirety of his time in office. And I know during my time in Washington, D.C., working at the State Department, having the opportunity to interface some with his office and seeing just how disconnected he was and his priorities were from the needs of everyday Oklahomans. This had kind of been building for me. And then January 6, 2021, I mean, when we have a United States senator representing the people of Oklahoma, supporting an insurrection, fanning the flames of an insurrection, it's time for him to go. And I think it showed his disconnect from the people of Oklahoma, and disconnect from supporting democracy, supporting our Constitution, and ensuring that our government works for the people.
You know, you mentioned supporting an insurrection, and certainly he did a good job of that on January 6th. But his record goes back a long way in terms of harming people in the state of Oklahoma. Yeah. I'll share something with you and our viewers. The day that this was the Chick-fil-A debacle, when people were boycotting Chick-fil-A, and he posted on his Facebook page mounds and mounds and mounds of Chick-fil-A food, and with just it was so insensitive. And I had a young man walk into my office that day. He was probably 30, 32, and he said, "I have never felt more invisible than I feel right now." Mm-hmm. And so, you know, if you are so brazen as to just summarily dismiss that many Oklahomans because of your own bigotry, you can call it religious beliefs, whatever, but that is nothing more than bigotry. And did his personal, the way that he does things personally, did that impact your decision to run, Jason?
It did, because, you know, having lived in Oklahoma my whole life, and you know, knowing everyday Oklahomans, I grew up in the rural part of the state, but have been in the Oklahoma City area about 10 years. I saw and continue to see that the way James Lankford conducts himself, and the way that his priorities do not align with the needs and the wants of everyday Oklahomans. Yes, we've got Republicans and Democrats, libertarians, et cetera, but Oklahomans want people who actually work for them and actually are in tune with their needs. James Lankford is not. Like you said, he only seeks to represent a select few Oklahomans. And I will also say that since launching this campaign, I have been had numerous people reach out to me who had worked with Senator Lankford in the past, who had, you know, gone to church camp with him, had Southern Baptist people who had, you know, gone to Falls Creek with him, who say they don't support the direction he's taken. The person he is today is not the person they helped get elected originally in 2010. And so I think it's clear from that in and of itself how far he has strayed from the line. You know, he may have had some agenda at some point, but we can see today that he is just completely within the throes of the fringe narrative of the Republican Party.
And we should say it's that fringe narrative that is gaining momentum in eliminating Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. Mm-hmm. Now, if that should happen, and we can only pray that it never will, but if that should happen, how many of our seniors would actually be out on the street tomorrow? The number is inestimable.
A huge portion. Our seniors, also our veterans. That's another group that he has continued to ignore. Many people probably saw today the petition going around to keep the Veterans Center in Muskogee. I was in Muskogee last week meeting with community leaders about that. And the reason that is an issue right now is because Senator Lankford and the rest of our delegation refuses to engage, refuses to push for funding for that. And that center not only services eastern and southeastern Oklahoma, it also services portions of western Arkansas, northeast Texas. And so we're talking about a huge chunk of the population missing out on services that, mind you, the United States owes to these people for their service to us, that Senator Lankford just won't work for.
Well, you know, I don't want to spend the whole time talking about him, but there's so much to be angry about, Jason. The fact that he and our entire congressional delegation voted against Build Back Better. They have been relentless in trying to stop the progress of the Biden administration, all to the detriment of Oklahomans. And this is something it's not connecting for me. Can you help me figure out why anyone would still support, frankly, any of our congressional delegation?
I wish I knew. If I had the answer to that, I think I would be doing very well for myself, because, and I mean, I will say that I've had conversations with many people who have supported him in the past who are now supporting our campaign. So that is good. That people are seeing just, how what he is doing is bad for Oklahoma. But you're right. There is still a huge constituency that supports him. He obviously is raising money, although a lot of that money comes from outside the state of Oklahoma, comes from special interest groups. But those that I found who support him, a lot of times there's not a good reason. It's just because they've supported him in the past. He's helped them on certain issues that were important to them. And, we all have that. But at the end of the day, he is supposed to be a senator for all Oklahomans, and he's failed at that job miserably since day one.
Thank you for that, because I agree with you. We have a question from one of our viewers, and it's dealing with the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. And that is a state issue that would not be one at the federal level. So I won't ask you to go into that, but part of her question, I think, is very relevant. And Jason, what are your goals for rural Oklahomans?
Well, having spent a majority of my life in rural Oklahoma and seeing, how the needs truly for the entirety of my life have gone unaddressed in rural Oklahoma, there's a lot to do. And I think it starts with infrastructure. Yes, we're getting some money from Build Back Better, but we've gone for so long without addressing these issues that there's more to do than what this funding will cover. And so improving our roads and bridges in across the state. In the eastern part of the state, we've got flood control issues. In the western part of the state, we've got drought issues. Many of the shelter belts that were planted after the Dust Bowl have now died. And so it's rebuilding rural infrastructure, but also a large part of that is broadband access.
It's got to be because over 28% of Oklahomans have zero access to broadband service.
And that's something I've talked to rural educators about a lot, because during the pandemic and still following the pandemic, because they still have students who are learning remotely, the pandemic completely changed the way they teach, and people were provided this option. And so now it's still expected if a student is sick or, has the flu, even if it's not COVID. But the problem is so many people don't have access in rural areas. So their parents are having to bring them after work to sit in front of the school and access the Wi-Fi. It's just not tenable for our future. We've got to get these people access. And we saw today the Biden administration's new plan to help people pay for broadband service, which is wonderful. But the problem we're still going to have in rural Oklahoma is people can't take advantage of that if they don't have access to the service. And so expanding that service it's huge for education, but also for our rural economies, because I know that people would move out of Oklahoma City and Tulsa into more rural areas and work remotely, but they can't right now because the internet's not fast enough.
And, one of the things that frustrates me is when I was in Kenya, you could be 150 miles from the nearest person, but have superb cell service.
Yeah.
I mean, so the technology is there. We just simply have abandoned so many people in our state, and we have more rural Oklahomans than we do urban and suburban.
Yeah.
One of our viewers, Amber Jensen, who is chair of CD3, is asking, what are your top 3 issues if elected?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that question from Amber and appreciate her work, especially as someone who grew up in Congressional District 3 in Southwest Oklahoma. we've really got four, but I would say that the top three, number one is infrastructure, continuing to build our infrastructure. Number two is expanding access to healthcare opportunities for rural Oklahomans and for veterans. Number three is increasing funding for public education. I've learned over the course of this campaign how many opportunities there are at the federal level for funding and bringing funding back to the state of Oklahoma that's actually owed to us for public schools that our current congressional delegation just is not working on. They're saying it's not a priority. And so, of course, strengthening our public schools. In addition to that, as we've seen right now, I know Amber just asked for three, but I am a pro-choice candidate, and we have obviously got to ensure that people's rights and the right to privacy is protected, as many of our other rights that we hold dear stem from that. And so that's added to the agenda too.
Very good. And if you needed a number six, Wayne Johnson is suggesting get rid of Republicans.
Yeah.
Jana Lewis Harkins, who is president of our Oklahoma Women's Federation, is watching this evening. And she says, telemedicine is so important, especially with gas prices and possible shortages. Yeah. What are your thoughts on telemedicine?
Oh, I think it's critical. And I've talked to a lot of people who have used it. I've used it myself. It was extremely critical during COVID as people weren't able to access medical care because they were contagious. The problem we have here in Oklahoma, again, is people who can't do telemedicine if they don't have internet access. And so, yes, it's wonderful. And it would be a wonderful resource for our rural areas where people may have to drive an hour to an urgent care or a hospital. But we've got to get people the internet access to be able to do it.
And I'm glad you tied those two together because increasingly it's just, I can't imagine living in a home or working in a business where you had no access to broadband. It's unthinkable, really.
We use it in every aspect of our day.
Tell me, Jason, in the people that you've been talking to on the campaign trail, what are they saying to you when you say, tell me about what issues matter to you? Mm-hmm. Are there one or two that come really just straight to the top over and over?
Yeah, it depends on the part of the state I'm in. If I'm in the eastern part of the state, it's infrastructure and it's access to broadband. In addition to veterans issues, the potential closure again of the Muskogee VA is huge, is weighing heavily on people's minds in the eastern part of the state right now. In the western part of the state, it's the 2023 Farm Bill. We have the Farm Bill renewal coming up in 2023. We don't have a senator from Oklahoma currently sitting on the Senate Agriculture Committee. I feel very fortunate to be surrounded by agriculturalists, people I grew up with. We have some of the best in the nation here in Oklahoma for obvious reasons. It's vital to our economy, and we need someone on that committee representing the voices of Oklahomans. And so
very well said.
The wheat farmers, cattle ranchers, et cetera, they're all extremely concerned about it in 2023.
And what are you hearing in Oklahoma City or Tulsa?
People in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, Democrats and Republicans alike, are very tired of the noise from Washington, D.C. They're tired of the partisan games. They're tired of being lied to. They're tired of our politicians working to divide us and being more extreme than their neighbors. Because what I found on the ground here in Oklahoma City and in Tulsa and across the state is I can have a conversation with a Republican. I can talk to people about these issues that are important to all Oklahomans without getting inflamed, without inflaming them. And what we see, though, is that our politicians tell us we can't do that, and our politicians themselves refuse to do it. And so they can't get anything done. In the metro areas, that's what people are talking about. They're tired of the mess. They're tired of the wasted money and the wasted time.
Wow. That's a pretty good entree into office then, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely.
How has this journey been for You personally, I know it's exhausting, but what's it been like for your family, your circle of friends? Are they behind you, supporting you, or are they getting tired too?
I think I probably wear them out most days. I have a little more energy than they do. But they've all been wonderful. My partner Trey and I live here in Oklahoma City, and he is extremely supportive. It's so critical on the campaign trail to have that person you can come home to and just bounce ideas off of, vent about things to, and he's great with that. My parents have both been extremely helpful, both financially and in just providing advice and support. And a whole group of my friends here in Oklahoma City and in Tulsa have marched in parades with me. They've been to the campaign office and volunteered. Worked on thank you letters, and we're continuing to build that team. And so many people I've made friends with over the course of this campaign. I can't thank enough our Democratic caucuses in the state legislature. Every single one of those people has been wonderful and provided advice, provided direction to me. And we're really fortunate here in Oklahoma to have them working for us every day in what is an extremely difficult job.
Speaking of the legislature, I don't know if you saw this when it was up a moment ago, but John Waldron is throwing some nice favor your direction. So
well, I appreciate
that's
that. And I absolutely include Representative Waldron among that group, who has been extremely helpful to me.
Jason, in terms of you as not a candidate or a lawyer, but just as a person, tell us something about you that you think we need to know.
Yeah. I'm someone who rises above adversity and has done it in many aspects of my life. I grew up in rural Southwest Oklahoma, was one of 37 students in my graduating class, and was one of 4 people to even enter college out of my class. I then, it was just, I thought, do I go on to get an associate's degree? That was really the best path I could see from that point. But then I went on to OU and then just kept going. And so now I'm a practicing attorney in Oklahoma City. I then, from rural Southwest Oklahoma, made my way to the U.S. Department of State, and then made my way to the Iran U.S. Claims Tribunal in The Hague. And so, in addition to that story, I am someone who, I have never been athletic, and as a kid was never athletic. And I decided at one point while I was in college, you know what, I'm going to start running, and I'm going to run in the Oklahoma City Memorial Marathon. And within the year, I trained myself to do it and ran the half. And so it's just, I'm someone that in every aspect of my life, it's never, am I going to be able to do this? It's just when I decide what's important, and obviously with the advice and counsel of my family and friends, it gets done. And that's what I hope to bring those aspects of my personality to the United States Senate in representing Oklahomans, because I know I've worked in Washington, D.C. I know this is not an easy job. You have forces from all sides pushing you to do different things. People from outside the state pushing you, offering you things in exchange for pushing their agenda. But at the end of the day, Oklahomans will send me to the United States Senate to represent their needs. And above all else, that has to be what my mind is set to. And I've got to be able to negotiate with and work with people of differing opinions and views and get the work done no matter what for the people of Oklahoma. And so I intend to take that grit and the tenacity that I've developed throughout my life to represent and help the people of Oklahoma.
That would be a perfect way to end this broadcast, but I've got to give you another couple of questions, because these come from 2 people. And they're both interrelated. What are your thoughts on protecting and expanding voting rights?
Well, I am a fervent supporter of the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And I think we, first and foremost, based on the attack on our democracy we've seen right here in Oklahoma from our state legislature, we have got to have an independent commission for redistricting. It's critical to the future of our democracy. In addition to that, expand in any way that we can expand access to the ballot box and ensure that people are able to vote and know when they are supposed to vote, know where they're supposed to vote, and make it easy to do so that people aren't standing in line in the heat, et cetera. All of these things, there is nothing in that realm that I wouldn't support as long as we are not ever compromising election security. We do a pretty good job of it here in Oklahoma. Other states need to take note of the way we do it with our mail-in ballot system, et cetera. But we've got improvements we can do. We still have many barriers to the ballot box here in Oklahoma, and we've got to work to remove those.
We're going to put your website up again because we want people to know how they can reach out to you, how they can contribute to your campaign, how they can ask questions about your position on things. And it's been such a nice visit with you this evening, and we'll be interviewing some of the other folks that are in your primary, and we're working like I said, from now through the primaries to have candidates on both on this broadcast as well as our Chairs Daily Live. But you've been terrific guest this evening, Jason, and I'm always appreciative of the time that we get to visit.
Well, thank you, Scott, and likewise. And as a final note, I just wanted to say, in this primary, we've got a crowded primary, but this primary is about electing the person best suited to stand toe-to-toe with James Lankford in November. That's what this election is about, that the future of our democracy and the needs of everyday Oklahomans depend on it. And so as people are evaluating the candidates, that's what they should look at. And I feel that I'm that person. I hope I can convince others that I'm that person. And I hope you'll join our team. The website was up, jasonforoklahoma.com. Email address is there, phone numbers there. Please reach out. I do read the emails and respond to them. So look forward to talking with everyone.
Jason, have a good evening, and we'll be in touch real soon, my friend.
Thank you so much.
Well, like I said, I'm excited when we get to spend time with a candidate, and I'm so grateful that so many of you jumped in this evening with questions of your own, because it's about your questions and getting answers to those that makes this program work. And I always encourage you to let us know what you think. And obviously, we'll be tied up with candidates for a while, but if you've got ideas for future shows, please let us know. Finally, just want to remind you that the Oklahoma Democratic Party is hiring. We have several positions that we are looking to fill, and you can find all of the details on our website at okdemocrats.org/jobs. Well, it's been a good evening. I'm so thankful that you joined us, and I hope that you will have a great week. And when we come back together again next week, we'll all be just a little bit smarter than we are today, hearing from good people like Jason Bollinger. From all of us at the Oklahoma Democratic Party and the Hamilton Report, I'm Scott J. Hamilton. Good night.